We'll see if we can fill them.
With the price per foot for gators the lowest in over a decade, Willie's determined to rake in bigger gators with bigger payout.
They warned us early about Willie Edwards, the wiry boy from the Louisiana bayous who grew into a man with a stubborn streak and a hunger for challenge. From the time he was young, people whispered that he pushed himself too far, that he didn't know how to pull back when danger was close. And they weren't exaggerating. Willie wasn't content to chase the smaller catches or to work in the safe hours of the morning. He was the kind of hunter who wanted the biggest gators, the roughest waters, and the darkest nights. He went after snakes when the swamps were at their thickest and most unforgiving, and when most hunters would have turned back, Willie kept going. Family members, fans of the show, even seasoned hunters told anyone who'd listen. Willie was risking it all, and while he carried himself with confidence, there's no question those warnings had weight, because sooner or later the swamp takes its toll. And in Willie's case, the tragedies that came later in life made those old warnings cut deep, as if they'd been written in the water long before. But before we talk about the heartbreaks and the moments that nearly broke him, we have to understand the world he came from. Who are the swamp people? And how did Willie Edwards grow into one of the faces most people remember from the show? Swamp People wasn't just another reality program. When it first aired on the History Channel back on August 22, 2010, it struck a chord. Television had already tried its hand at countless survival shows, dramatic competitions, and high-stakes series about people working dangerous jobs. But Swamp People was different. It didn't script danger. It captured a way of life that had been carried on for generations. The heart of the series was in the Atchafalaya River Basin, one of the most sprawling and wild wetland regions in America, where water, mud, and marsh stretch further than the eye can see. Out there, people didn't just live near the swamp, they lived with it. For families in southern Louisiana, the swamp wasn't only a backdrop, it was home, tradition, and survival. And through the series, audiences were pulled into that world, where catching an alligator wasn't sport, it was livelihood. The central challenge of the show, and of the culture it portrayed, was the alligator hunting season. In Louisiana, that season is short, brutal, and intense. It begins the first Wednesday of September and lasts only 30 days. Just 30 days for hunters to catch as many gators as their tags allow. The state issues these tags as legal permits, each one tied to a single alligator. They aren't just paper slips. They're lifelines. Without them, a hunter has nothing to show, nothing to sell, and no way to make the season count. The number of tags each hunter receives is limited, based on conservation efforts and population counts. If they manage to use every tag before the month is up, they've tagged out, the ultimate achievement in the swamp. But if they don't, the unused tags are wasted, along with the income they could have brought. That makes the 30 days, a non-stop race against time, the unpredictable weather, and the unforgiving dangers of the swamp itself. And make no mistake, the dangers are everywhere. Out there, the swamp is alive with more than just gators. Snakes, insects, sudden storms, even the water itself. It all works against you. Hunters depend on years of experience to make it through, knowing where to set their lines, how high to place bait, and how to navigate waters that can shift overnight. This isn't something you can learn in a week. It's a tradition passed down for centuries. The Cajun families of Louisiana have been hunting gators for nearly 300 years, keeping alive methods that blend instinct with hard-earned knowledge. Fathers teach sons, mothers teach daughters, and every child grows up with a respect for the swamp and its rhythms. It's not just a job, it's heritage, survival, and culture all bound together. But when the season ends, the work doesn't stop. That's something outsiders don't always realize. Most of the hunters don't spend the rest of the year relaxing. They pivot to whatever work they can find. Some set trot lines for catfish or fill traps for crawfish and crabs. Others go after shrimp, turtles, raccoons, or any resource the swamp provides. A few work regular jobs, balancing the old ways with modern employment just to keep food on the table. That balance, between tradition and today, is one of the things that gives swamp people its heartbeat, because it shows that these hunters aren't actors or adventurers passing through. They are real people, tied to their land, scraping out, living one season at a time. When swamp people first began, viewers were introduced to several different families and hunting crews, each with their own style and rhythm. And it was through those introductions that we met Willie Edwards, alongside his father, Junior Edwards. From the start, their bond stood out. Junior was a man hardened by years in the swamp, a fisherman and hunter who had weathered every storm and seen every change the land had to offer. Willie, his son, was learning from him, not just how to survive the 30-day rush, but how to respect the water, how to respect the animals, and how to respect the traditions they'd inherited. In those early seasons, father and son worked side by side, running their boat together as they went after some of the biggest gators in the basin. But over time, things changed. Willie began striking out on his own, taking hunts solo, testing, himself without his father at his side. For fans of the show, it was a noticeable shift, and it became even more dramatic after an accident that could have ended their partnership forever. Junior had accidentally shot Willie in the hand. For most families, something like that might have left scars deeper than the wound itself, but not for the Edwards men. Willie returned to the boat almost immediately, standing beside his father with the same steady loyalty as before. He never once badmouthed Junior on or off camera. Not when his father scolded him, not when tempers flared, and not even after the shot that could have ended his career as a hunter. Willie's respect for his father ran too deep to be shaken by an accident. If you watched closely, you could see what made Willie stand out. There were two traits that defined him on the water: his fearlessness and his loyalty. He took risks others might not, lunging for gators with moves that seemed reckless but worked. And he carried himself with a kind of quiet boldness, never backing down from the swamp's challenges. At the same time, his loyalty to his father was unwavering. Junior was loud, demanding, and exacting. He wanted things done right every time, down to the inch. If Willie pulled a gator's head 2 feet out of the water instead of 1.5, Junior corrected him. If the hook was off target by just a few inches, Junior barked at him. But Willie never pushed back. He listened, he learned, and he kept showing respect. He knew his father's knowledge was decades deep, and he wanted to absorb every lesson he could. Every hunting crew on the show had its own way of working. Troy Landry, known as the King of the Swamp, built his hunts around rhythm and teamwork, often with Clint or Liz at his side, though his patience was tested when he worked with his son Jacob, unless the pressure of a thunderstorm forced them into sync. RJ and J. Paul Molinaire leaned on the instincts of their Huma heritage, zipping across the water in their airboat with a style all their own. The Gist brothers moved at a slower pace, letting the swamp set their rhythm, often turning their catches into meals with a beer in hand. And then there was Junior and Willie. They shared similarities with the others: foul-smelling bait, lines, set at just the right height, long days from sunrise to dusk. But they also had a method no one else used: the hand-thrown treble hook. That hook became their signature. Viewers watched as they melted down lead, poured it into a pipe filled with hooks, and created a heavy, homemade weapon perfect for snagging gators. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't bought, it was built with their own hands. And it worked. Willie, in particular, grew skilled with the treble hook, tossing it with precision, dragging up gators in a way that seemed effortless but was anything but. It became one of the defining marks of their hunts, a symbol of their creativity and determination to carve their own path in the swamp. Junior himself was unlike many other hunters. For most swampers, the 30-day gator season was only part of the year's work. When it ended, they had to turn to other jobs, shifting into fishing, trapping, or outside work to keep steady income. But Junior didn't shift. He lived it. year-round. He was a fisherman every day of the year, grinding through the changes of fish prices, weather shifts, and the uncertainty of the market. In southern Louisiana, where one bad season could break you, that was no small accomplishment. And it was clear where Willie got his work ethic, his toughness, and his refusal to quit. Willie Edwards was never just a background figure on Swamp People. He represented what the series was all about: tradition, respect, danger, and survival. And as much as he thrived in the swamp, his life off camera would eventually show the world just how heavy that life could become. Because tragedy doesn't spare anyone, not even the strongest hunters. And in Willie's case, the losses he faced would shake even the toughest man to his core. Willie Edwards was never just a background figure on Swamp People. He represented what the series was all about: tradition, respect, danger, and survival. And as much as he thrived in the swamp, his life off camera would eventually show the world just how heavy that life could become. Because tragedy doesn't spare anyone, not even the strongest hunters. And in Willie's case, the losses he faced would shake even the toughest man to his core. The first heartbreak came within his own family. Willie had always been a family man, not just in the sense of working beside his father, but in how he built his own home and loved his wife and children. Fans who followed his story outside of the show saw glimpses of a quieter side of him. Away from the water, he wasn't the bold daredevil, but a husband and father who cared deeply for those closest to him. When tragedy hit his family, it was sudden and devastating. His daughter, Michaela, passed away far too young, leaving Willie and his wife in unimaginable grief. The swamp, for all its danger, had never broken him. But losing a child left a wound deeper than any gator's bite. It was the kind of loss that no man, no matter how strong, is ever truly prepared for. And yet, Willie had to carry on, for his other children, for his wife, and for himself. Viewers of Swamp People didn't see every detail of this pain. The show wasn't about personal tragedy, it was about hunting, survival, and tradition. But those who knew Willie, and even those who paid close attention, could feel the difference. Behind the bold hunts and the quiet determination, there was a man carrying sorrow. It gave him a depth, a weight, that perhaps explained why he hunted with such focus, why he took risks so fearlessly. Because when life has already shown you how fragile it can be, the dangers of the swamp don't seem so overwhelming. But that wasn't the only loss he would face. His father, Junior Edwards, the man who had taught him everything, the one whose loud voice had guided him through mistake after mistake, the one he respected even after an accidental shot to the hand, eventually stepped away from the show. Junior had been a defining presence on Swamp People, not just for Willie, but for audiences who saw in him the raw essence of a true swamper. When Junior left, it wasn't just a casting change. It was the end of an era. For Willie, it meant stepping into a role he hadn't fully carried before, being not just the son, but the leader, the one who bore the weight of the Edwards legacy on his shoulders. Carrying that legacy was no small task. Fans had grown to love the Edwards team for their grit, their treble hook, their relentless push to tag out every season. Now, Willie had to carry those traditions on his own, balancing the memories of his father's methods with the reality of hunting alone or with new partners. The swamp is never kind, and without Junior's voice booming across the boat, the silence was deafening. Willie was forced to prove not just to viewers, but to himself, that he could stand alone as a hunter, as a provider, and as a man of the swamp, and prove it he did. Season after season, Willie continued to show up, catching gators, setting lines, and throwing that treble hook with the same precision fans had come to expect. But there was always something more to his story than the hunts themselves. Every time he stepped onto that boat, he was carrying his family's history. The lessons from his father, the memory of his daughter, the traditions of generations before him. It wasn't just about filling tags anymore. It was about survival in every sense of the word, survival of his family, survival of his culture, and survival of himself through grief. When fans look at Willie Edwards today, they don't just see a hunter, they see resilience personified. They see a man who has faced the swamp's dangers and life's cruelest losses, and who still gets up day after day to do the work his family has always done. He represents the core of what swamp people has always been about. Not fame, not drama, but the real, raw life of people tied to the swamp. In many ways, Willie's story mirrors the larger story of the swamp culture itself. For centuries, families here have faced hardships that outsiders can hardly imagine. Hurricanes that level entire towns, floods that wipe out everything, markets that rise and fall without warning, and the ever-present dangers of the swamp itself. And yet, like Willie, they endure. They pass down their traditions, they teach their children the ways of the water, and they survive. Willie's journey, with all its highs and lows, is a reflection of that endurance. Looking back at the early seasons of Swamp People, you can see how much things have changed. The cast has shifted, families have come and gone, and the swamp itself has changed with the years. But through it all, the Edwards name has remained one that fans remember. Junior may have stepped away, but Willie has kept the flame alive. And though the show can only capture pieces of their lives, the truth is that what happens off-camera often shapes the story more than anything else. The tragedies, the losses, the quiet moments of strength, those are the things that make Willie Edwards more than just a character on television. They make him a man whose life resonates far beyond the swamp. It's easy, watching a show like Swamp People, to get caught up in the thrill of the hunt, the splash of the water, the roar of a gator, the crack of a rifle. But when you look closer, you realize it's not just about the hunt. It's about people like Willie Edwards, who carry centuries of tradition on their shoulders while navigating the heartbreaks and struggles of modern life. His story is a reminder that the swamp isn't just a place on a map. It's a living, breathing world that shapes everyone who calls it home. And for Willie, it has shaped him into someone unforgettable. Not because he was fearless, not because he was reckless, but because he kept going, no matter what. And maybe that's why the warnings about Willie linger. From the beginning, people said he pushed too hard, took too many risks, went too far. But perhaps they missed the point. For Willie Edwards, going farther wasn't recklessness, it was necessity. It was how he honored his father, how he carried his family, and how he survived his deepest losses. In the end, the swamp tests everyone. Some it breaks, others it strengthens. For Willie, it has done both, and that's what makes his story one worth remembering.